Hello and welcome. Today I'm looking at the PC version of Borderlands 3, a game that has kind of had a rougher launch on consoles, and the point I think is to really try and leverage the PC platform's power, the ability to scale, and in this case for a mid-range PC with a GTX 1060 and a Core i5-8400. And to talk about this optimization, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, John Linneman. How you doing there, John?
Pretty good, Alex. Just watching you play here. We're gonna kind of do this in real time.
And if you notice, this is the Borderlands 3 staging area after you do the initial mission. And I'm playing at the badass settings, and it's running in 1080p in DirectX 11 or DX11. The reason why I chose DX11 in the first place was kind of after benchmarking the game on a variety of PCs with AMD and NVIDIA graphics cards, I found out that DirectX 11 is best for those scenarios when you're GPU limited. So in this case, yes. the GTX 1060 is going to be very GPU limited in this game. You know, Unreal Engine 4 is kind of a beast at higher settings always.
Right.
And I found that DirectX 12 was depending upon your hardware, about 40 to 50% faster in CPU limited scenarios. But that's like when you're targeting something like 120 FPS. For something like this, where we're targeting 60, it's less important. But if you are targeting 120 FPS, I do recommend giving out DirectX 12 a try, because it'll definitely probably help those minimum frame rates and some stuttering.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So it just kind of depends on your hardware.
Yeah, it'll very much so depending upon your hardware and what you're targeting. But for most people that are GPU limited, DirectX 11. And in this case, it's 37 FPS.
It's not great right now, is it? In fact, are you sure you're playing on PC and you didn't swap in like a PS4 Pro?
Oh, believe me. I mean, I would love to have FCAT on PS4 Pro. I think you would too. Yes. But in this case, it's just kind of like the default settings, and which are badass. First thing you'll definitely want to turn down, and I think I've seen this all across the web, and it's the most obvious one, is you go into your settings and you turn down volumetric fog, basically. Oh. And this is using that kind of Froxel fog we've seen throughout the generation, and that's been integrated in Unreal Engine 4. And by turning it down from high to medium, you're going to be seeing 34% better performance on a rig like this. And the reason why that is such a big deal is because that amount of performance brings us up from the 30s into the mid 40s already without having done much of anything. And if you noticed, the game looks pretty much the exact same. So
I guess technically it's just adjusting the density of the Froxel volume.
Fog. Yeah. If you look closely at it, like, it'll still have the same amount of fog in the distance. It doesn't call out the distance. Rather, it'll make it a bit more aliased. And in this game, it's just chunkier, and it's really actually hard to see in this game in comparison to like Gears of War 5, where it was much more obvious. In this game, you barely see the difference.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the biggest things that you can do immediately after getting in the game. But still, we're not there.
Yeah, it's still pretty chunky. Yeah, it seems like so you're running with VSync disabled.
VSync is off right now.
And you're kind of just hanging under 60 FPS most of the time. What resolution are you at right now?
At 1080p.
Oh,
and,
wow, okay.
Obviously, it explains quite a bit about how, like the resolution on consoles is probably very much so GPU limited on something like the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro, why they're getting the performance they are. I don't think CPU limiting is coming into effect there that much, at least for what we saw.
Well, the way the game is designed for consoles, I'd imagine that they put a lot of emphasis on offloading from the CPU anyway.
Yeah, right.
As you do. But wow.
Wait, I mean, just trying to kill these prairie dogs things? Okay, sorry. But, another point of optimization in this game is one that we can kind of see from here. It's probably best if I go up to an area where you can see it a bit better. 1 second, One
thing I can't tell from running around here, are the shadows dynamic according to the sun position, or are they baked?
No, this is a weird thing. That's what I really wanted to show off when I get to an area where I can overlook. The game does have a dynamic time of day, but all it actually really does is change the color of the lighting from the sky.
That's what I was thinking. From the That's how Xenoblade Chronicles X works.
Yeah.
Or Cross on the Wii U.
And the reason why they do it is super kind of interesting. So like here, this is a dynamic shadow map. But if you stare far into the distance, you should see that thing over there, it looks weirdly crisp. If you were to just turn down the kind of shadows to low even, you'll see that shadow still being there.
Oh yeah.
Even though they're on low. The thing is, the game actually, I think, is using Unreal Engine 4's sign distance field shadows for the distance, but they're static. So all changing the low shadow setting does is changes the resolution of shadow maps and the cascades which they cast out.
Yeah, that's pretty bad looking there when you.
Yeah, this is low. Obviously, this looks super janky. For this setting, I recommend high. I mean, it's a little bit faster, about 2% on average than I found in Ultra, so not very much, but it still keeps them in the distance.
And you can see there that it didn't really have enough of an impact on your performance to warrant that huge drop.
No, not at all.
Very
so like
distracting.
High still looks pretty good. And you'll always get shadows in the distance no matter what.
Oh, I will say, just seeing what you did there, I appreciate a PC game where you can see settings change behind the menu in real time.
That's one of the great things about this game, I think, in general. The settings menu is really good. The only problem is kind of scalability. You've got about 4 to 5 key settings that you'll want to change where you'll see a difference in performance. The rest is a bit, you don't see that much of a difference, which is the only problem, I would say. The best scaling you'll end up finding is usually resolution in games like this. But,
Does it have a resolution slider so you can output at native res? Wow.
Oh, yeah, you can. That does have some knock-on effects. Like, I've noticed that when you change that, say, like, down to 75, you'll see that the outlines, technically, on the guns, it uses the shader to create these stencil outlines. They get less thick the lower your resolution is from native, which is something I actually didn't expect necessarily. But obviously that puts us in the 60 FPS range just by doing that. But that is not the best form of tweaking. I think dropping your resolution is your last resort right now. The best point to go after this
is my last resort. Oh,
yes, John. You and I love that song, obviously, as we found out at Gamescom. The next form of tweaking I think everyone should do is, like, if you look in this corner over here, and let me put my gun away because it's it's not the best looking model on Earth, I think, honestly, and two, we have to see what this SSAO looks like. This is on Ultra, and this game already does a lot of kind of really diffuse textures, kind of has this baked SDF lighting. You're not seeing that much of a difference at all.
Also, honestly, with the way the ground rubble there intersects with that boulder, looks really awkward to me, to my eyes. I mean, I'm not sure AO isn't going to save that.
No, a lot of this first level's lighting in general is kind of, I would say, or just general look is not very great looking. I think the later levels in the game are much better, but putting down SSAO to medium on average, you're getting an image that looks very, very, very similar. It's almost ridiculous how similar it looks. And you're going to see about 2% average better performance. It's not a lot, but the whole point is bringing our performance back up in general without affecting image quality. And SSAO is a key aspect of doing that. So put that down to medium if you can in this game.
So one thing I'm noticing then, at least the UI seems quite responsive on PC. Yeah, that was one of the major faults with the console version, is that the UI is just very, very slow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect in this game, I would say, but it's better than, I would say, when I loaded up the Xbox One X version really quickly. Yeah. That felt really slow. The fact that you just have unlocked frame rates in the menu helps a great deal. But still, the game does, on some levels, feel kind of unpolished. Just even kind of doing some of the shooting stuff. It doesn't feel, oddly enough, as good as other games that I've played in this genre, like Rage 2 recently. It's not Diablo-esque in terms of upgrading your weapons, but it's, this open-worldy kind of Mad Maxy looking FPS game, and just I feel very slow and sluggish in this game. But yeah, as you can see, we're still dipping in combat, 50s.
Yeah.
It's going above 60 sometimes, but it still needs a bit. That was nice. It still needs a bit more.
One thing I'm actually wondering about is I remember in the PC version of Borderlands 2, there was a physics option.
Yeah, there
was tons of small objects and other things around the environment that would explode and bounce around in interesting ways. And this looks much more static, like comparatively.
Yeah, there is some physics I'll show you off with. Let's kill this dude. Yeah, nice jibbing, which is really good. There is some kind of physical interaction with the game environment that usually happens around chippable blocks that you'll take cover behind. I mean, this isn't a cover shooter by any stretch.
No, I mean, that's the same kind of stuff that Gears 5 has as well.
See, this one already has the broken bits on it, so you can't actually break it anymore.
So it is completely scripted then. Well,
there we go. So yeah, like a tiny bit came off. Most of the destruction that does occur in the game is like that. So none of that crazy physics debris everywhere across the environment.
Dang,
but,
where's the video showcasing that Borderlands 3 lacks impact compared to Borderlands 2? I hope that's being made.
That's probably less controversial. I mean, I don't know.
But this is such a popular series, so
I know, right? Someone will make something like that. In the end, though, like, I mean, I don't think that's why people played Borderlands in the first place. They're probably playing it for see that was a not bad looking bit of environmental interaction.
So a few objects like that have destructible bits on them.
Yeah.
But there's not the loose physical objects that we have in Borderlands 2 as much.
You know, the weird thing is I noticed that something wasn't right with the game's... I'm probably going to die, by the way, because I'm playing very poorly
with
this mouse. But I noticed that something wasn't right on the ultra performance settings when I loaded up the game initially on an RTX 2080 Ti. And that was... Here, I'm out of ammo in both guns. I can give up, apparently. Yeah. As you can see, I'm very adept at playing Borderlands here.
I do like how you called it the 1080 Ti, or what was it?
Oh, the RTX 2080 Ti.
Yeah, the 2080 Ti. Like, I'm thinking of some Star Wars action here. It's like the 2080 TIE fighter.
After just playing Gears of War 5 or Gears 5, I just cranked this up to the ultra settings, and I was kind of greeted by like 40 FPS in the initial staging area, and it didn't honestly look that pretty. I mean, if you look at some of the texture work here,
it's interesting then how it is rather like this. The issues that we see on console, you can understand them when you see this game on PC.
Yeah, exactly.
It's clearly not a hugely performant game right now.
No, not in its current state, and I think it's still under the stages of optimization because the DirectX 12 option in the menu currently just says beta. I don't think they even want you to use it.
They're not even. It's not really ready yet.
Yeah, no, it's not. So let's get out of this combat, which is just droning away the time here. So next form of optimization for most people will be kind of taking down something called material complexity or material quality. This is a setting where I have gone throughout the entire world doing a bunch of comparison screenshots for myself, and I, for the life of me, could not see any difference between going to ultra and medium, whereas turning it from ultra to medium brought up performance by around 4%. And as I show you some of these screens right here, you won't be able to see any difference at all when turning this down, and yet it magically increases your performance by quite a big deal. 4% is nothing to scoff at in a game where you're...
Now, before you continue, I am curious. If you look on the left there on that bridge, I almost get the impression that it's some sort of plastic with a transparency shadow on it, but I suspect that's not at all. Right there, yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like, I guess it's just baked into the texture, or... No, not even there. Like, yeah, you see what I mean? Like, it looks like it's a transparent surface of some sort.
It does look that way.
It's like a diffuse plastic where you can see the shadow from the other side. But I really go check the other side. I assume that's not what it is.
No, it's
definitely
supposed to
not
be corrugated sheet metal. But I think the funny thing is, like, since this game is using hand painted texture work everywhere, mixed with weird amounts of specularity and kind of, I guess, SSAO, you don't actually know you don't know that's metal from it having a specular response. It's just a texture trying to look like metal.
And that's cool. I do appreciate, I can see that a lot of effort went into designing all these hand painted textures, and they are often beautiful. I mean, the only real issue seems to be that the actual resolution of the assets as they are presented in game is a little bit low up close.
Yeah, that's like the thing too, and it also is I'm gonna turn on VSync soon enough because this is looking so terry. But
I'm tearing up over here.
Like here, you can see there's a tiny bit of specular response here.
Yeah.
But that also aids when you kind of are turning down settings. Most of the game's visual detail is preserved in the textures itself. If you turn down something like another setting to turn down is actually SSR. By turning that down, you're going to kind of, like in Gears of War 5, reduce the amount of objects that have SSR applied to them. But since most of the textures in this game world are diffuse anyway, and they have tiny bits of specularity on them, you're going to only see a bit of light leaking usually when you turn down SSR to medium.
I'd love to know how they authored their materials, actually, because I find that some really good PBR authored materials used for sort of a less realistic visual style can actually produce rather striking results.
Yeah, right? And you see that in some cases in this game. I think like the section I was in earlier where I was fighting off the initial boss character, there the kind of PBR materials mixing in with the hand-painted textures reminded me a bit of Rage. Which I really do obviously like that game's visual quality a lot. But like here, turning down SSR doesn't really matter that much. Here, this water surface doesn't even use SSR actually. If you turn it down to medium, you're going to gain 10% more performance without even affecting most of the game's visual quality and look.
I do like the mud texture below the water surface there.
Oh yeah, right.
That's actually quite nice looking.
See, that's like where they utilize the specularity to make it seem like the way it is. If it was just a flat texture, it would look more like Borderlands 1, honestly, and would look definitely not as good.
You know, it's funny now that you mentioned Rage, I am thinking of the original Rage.
Yeah.
When looking at this game, obviously it's larger scale, and
Yeah, by the way, I'm just turning down the settings here to everything else that I didn't set to medium already down to high.
Yeah. There's more going on here, but it does resemble the original Rage in some way. It's just it's kind of got that look to it.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is, if I can find one, like a lot of this game uses a ton of baked lighting as well. Like I was saying, like the baked SDF lightings for distant shadows, but also all of the indoor shadows kind of are using those SDF lights as well too, or SDF shadows too. So they don't actually cast real-time dynamic shadows, even though they look like it. They're actually.
I'm totally okay with that in some games. I mean, baked lighting still has its place.
In a game like this, where it's all about kind of getting performance for that co-op multiplayer gameplay, it makes the most sense actually to.
Yeah.
I suck it with this mouse. To make compromises for dynamic lighting and stuff like that. There's no reason why a game like this necessarily needs all this dynamic lighting.
Oh, absolutely.
But as you can see, I'm in combat here, 60, 61 FPS. It's just on the verge of being perfect. And I kind of want to say, even though it pains me dearly, the last optimization I think anyone with a mid-range rig should do that's targeting 60 FPS is to turn off motion blur of both varieties.
There is object motion. I can't even tell from the stream I'm looking at if there's object motion.
It
blur.
has a very low, it has a very high shutter speed, I should say. So it's really hard to see in general. So it doesn't actually aid the game's visuals that much.
I haven't had a chance to see if it's enabled on consoles because Tom's been doing most of the work there.
No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't actually on
consoles.
Yeah,
I don't think it does actually.
Yes. So now with object motion blur turned off, it's, you're going to be gaining, I'm pretty sure on average, somewhere around 3 to 7%, depending upon if there's other things testing the game's bandwidth at that moment in time, is what I noticed, which was just enough to bring a GTX 1060 into the 60 FPS range for most of the gameplay. Obviously, I think there's going to be areas still in the game, regardless of what you do, where there's going to be an explosion kicking off, probably in a grassy area, where you're going to see the FPS drop even lower than that. Okay. So like here's an example of one of those cool baked SDF shadows.
Yeah, that actually looks quite good there.
That does actually look really good.
That's a nice use of it.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the generic kind of optimization guide for this game. Turn everything to high as much as you can. Volumetric quality to medium, SSAO to medium, SSR to medium, material quality to medium, and turn off motion blur, as much as that pains me to say because I love object motion blur, and this game does that amazing ability to kind of turn off object motion blur separately from camera motion blur.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, but thanks for joining me, John.
All right, we'll let you get back to tweaking. So
yeah, let's go back to tweaking. But if you did enjoy this video and it really helps to turn down all these settings to medium, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, then please consider hitting that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry puts out a video. If you want to talk to me about Borderlands 3 optimization or how DirectX 12 is running on your PC, well, write a comment below. Follow John and myself on Twitter. And as always, this is John and Alex bidding you auf Wiedersehen und
go buy a CRT.